0. Something was wrong with Izuku. He would never show it, never admit that. Deep down, every day, his heart felt a little more cracked, a little more cold, that his eyes were sick of the burning sensation that came with trying to hold back his tears, or not being able to cry when he really wanted to. After all, that was his strong suit. Izuku always got back up. He matched a mental fortitude, an unmatched emotional strength that very few people in the world had. Life would beat him to the ground until he was black and blue, but he would get back up, always. But everyone had their limits. Even the strongest, healthiest people eventually shriveled up and died, just like Izuku's mental state. The day came sooner than it should have for someone so strong. Izuku could have gone his whole happy life and free, facing hardship with a smile, but he was only 15 when he finally tore apart. It was something, no, everything about that one day. His childhood friend being a horribly inaccurate, almost insulting word to call Katsuki Bakugo blew up, literally, his pride and joy. His hero notebook told him to kill himself, all because Izuku wanted to go to UA, just like Kachan, just like All Might. It wasn't just Bakugo. The whole class laughed, sneered, absolute ecstasy on their faces at the preposterous idea of Izuku Midoriya, the quirkless fanboy, going to quite possibly the most revered elite hero school in the world. It was so in the nation, at least. If that wasn't enough, he thought surely he was going to die on the way home from school. After being attacked and nearly suffocated by a villain made of sludge, he almost would have preferred the death there in hindsight. He just had to be saved by All Might, his idol, his everything. The man had a couple posters, figurines, and other toys of the man he admired more than anyone else. He was ecstatic to wake up to the revelation and even get an autograph from the man. That was ruined later, when he learned All Might was injured, acting as a hero for only a few hours a day. It was chilling that the man who stood up at the top of the world was in reality weak and emaciated. And that man had the gall to tell him he couldn't achieve his dream. That was his breaking point. He normally would have stayed out longer, walking around, watching the heroes fight the villains that cropped up, enjoying the sights, but he went home early. It didn't matter that a villain was on the loose nearby, and he sure didn't know the victim would be Kachan. He wasn't happy. Maybe in a different world, if he had a little more strength, he'd be glad, happy to find a more realistic dream to pursue. Here in this world, he was tired, exhausted of nobody believing in him. Nobody wanted to be around him, exhausted of the searing, aching spasms in his chest and the longing to bawl his heart out. The next day, Izuku didn't show up for school. He acted the same as always, a friendly breakfast with his mom. At least she pretended to care, he'd think. And he was out the door. He just took a different route than normal. He'd been thinking the night before how hard it was to live, how little others cared about his being around. Maybe Kachan was right. The next day, Izuku didn't show up for school. He acted the same as always, a friendly breakfast with his mom. At least she pretended to care, he'd think, and he was out the door. He just took a different route than normal. He'd been thinking the night before how hard it was to live, how little others cared about his being around. Maybe Kachan was right. He should just jump off a building and hope to be born with a quirk. Then they'd all like him. Then he could follow his dreams. It'd be so easy to do. And he decided. He thought all of this as he fell. What only lasted probably 10 seconds felt like a lifetime. Where the sinking in his gut felt like his organs twisting and turning and his heart pounding to escape his chest, his eyes stinging from the wind and his head throbbing madly.